Hello and welcome to the episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Today is Monday, December 26th. Hope everybody's having a good day so far and had a good rest of their day yesterday. It is, in fact, Monday, December 26th. Hope everybody had a good weekend. Hope everybody had a good Christmas and a happy holiday. We got a lot to get to today. We are coming out of an exciting weekend in the world of sports, a packed weekend in the NFL, a very busy weekend, a lot of positive results for the New York Jets, a positive past couple days for the New York Jets. If you're a New York Jets fan, Christmas was nice and Christmas was positive as a lot of good things happened yesterday to increase our playoff chances. And now we hear today that Mike White will obviously be out there and he'll be playing on Sundays. He's got cleared. So we'll get into all that. We'll get to, the NBA yesterday. We'll get to the NFL, we'll recap all the games. Nathaniel Hackett fired by the Denver Broncos. So a lot of moves are going on right now in the NFL. We're going to get into it all. You know the drill. It is a recap Monday. We'll get to the NFL recap. We'll get to Mike White. We'll get to Nathaniel Hackett and the Denver Broncos, who are really just embarrassing. We'll also get to fantasy football, recap it, get you ready for tonight, get you my game pick for tonight, Chargers, Colts, and obviously we'll finish things off, Nets on tonight, a little Monday night action after Christmas, and Knicks take a tough loss last night, or yesterday, after Jalen Brunson goes down. They could not do anything offensively, and the Sixers really took command of that game late. So we'll get into it all here today. With all that being said, this is the Bubbs on Sports podcast, and let's get into it. So yesterday was Christmas. You had a lot of great sports on yesterday. You had 3 NFL games on. One was highly entertaining. The other one was a complete blowout, and the other one was low scoring but overtime close game. So that was kind of how you can sum up the 3 NFL games yesterday. Highly entertaining, blowout, low scoring but a close game that went into overtime. Tom Brady beat Trace McSorley in his first NFL start. And yesterday was a very successful day. Also on Saturday, it was a very successful day if you are a New York Jets fan. We'll get to the Giants here in a second. But the Jets yesterday, a lot of things went their way. And Mike White, we got news today. He got cleared, which is a great, great sign. So Mike White will be out there on Sunday against the Seahawks in Seattle. And now all the Jets have to do is they got to go on the road, beat Seattle. If you get the job done there and you take care of business against Seattle, then Miami would be a winner goes into the playoffs, loser goes home, as long as New England loses one of their next 2 games. New England losing one of their next 2 games. They play Miami this weekend and then Buffalo. I can almost guarantee you they are not going to win both of those games. They might beat Miami. I don't see them beating Buffalo. So those 2 games happening, as long as the Patriots lose one of those games and the Jets win the next 2, Jets are in the playoffs. Once you get into the playoffs, once you get into tournament, anything can happen. That's kind of really how it is. So I am super, super fired up today as a New York Jets fan. And on top of that, you hear the news of Mike White coming back, which is pivotal and which is huge. I mean, you need Mike White back. You need him back on this team. He is a very solid quarterback. He is the best quarterback on this roster by far. Zach Wilson's a complete mess. He's not any good right now. That's the bottom line. I don't want to crush Zach. I don't want to continue to crush him. I don't want to continue to knock him down while he was already down. Look, his career here is most likely over. His season's over. Saleh said that today. He's not playing again this year, barring injury. This is Mike White's team. This is Mike White's opportunity, and we need this. This team plays with a lot more energy under Mike White. This team plays with a lot more passion. This team plays better, bottom line. This offense is better. The team is better with Mike White out there. So really looking forward to that in the coming days here, especially on Sunday in Seattle. So a positive weekend, a crazy weekend, because Thursday you lose. I obviously have a podcast on Friday, very upset, very disappointed in the way they performed on Thursday. You get some games that go your way on Saturday. Texans beating the Titans, Bengals over the Patriots. Those early window games go your way. And then Sunday yesterday, the Packers over the Dolphins was so big for so many reasons. And you get that there, and that's huge. So the Jets now have a realistic chance. If they win out, they have a 92% chance of making the playoffs. If they win out and New England loses one of its next 2 games, they are in. That's how it rolls. So you got 2 games left. Go and win them. You're on a 4-game losing streak. Go and win them. Get into the playoffs. Once you're in, anything can happen. That's the bottom line. That's really just how it is. So a very exciting weekend as a New York Jets fan, as they get a second chance and they get a new opportunity after what looked like the season was done. It is now right back, and it is now alive. It has been revived, and the Jets get a second chance. Take advantage of it. All right, so now let's get to the rest of the NFL. So over the weekend, I went to 11-4 on my Week 16 game picks. So that ups my record to 148-91 on the season. So having a very successful year, looking for over 150, 160 next weekend. A realistic goal would to be finish the year with 160 wins before going to the playoffs. 160 correct picks. You go into the playoffs, and I would probably aim for maybe about 170. 170 would be the realistic goal for this season's game picks. So we'll see. We'll see. Got the pick tonight, obviously, that'll lay out there, and we'll see how that plays out. All right, so a lot of games to recap here. We'll start with the Giants like we always do with the New York teams. Obviously, Jets did not have a game over the weekend, played on Thursday. So we'll start with the Giants, then we'll get to the rest of the NFL. We'll get to the Broncos and Nathaniel Hackett firing and all the craziness that happened throughout the league. Tough loss for the Giants. A really tough loss as they fall to the Minnesota Vikings 27-24. Vikings improved to 12-3 on the season. Giants fall to 8-6-1 on the year. Greg Joseph with a 61-yard field goal to win it. Giants lose. And a tough loss for the Giants, obviously. You come off of a primetime win against the Commanders. You have a winnable game on the road here against Minnesota. You have the game almost in your hands, and then you kind of let it go. Late in the game, you come back, and it was just a tough loss. But the bottom line is this: I look at it this way, and we'll get into the matchup here. We'll get to Daniel Jones here in a second. The Giants still control their own destiny. They got to win one game. They don't need any help. They don't need a win and another team to lose. The Giants are the definition of control their own destiny. If they win this weekend against the Colts, they're in. If they win next weekend against the Eagles, they're in. They need one win out of the next 2 games. It doesn't matter how they get it. It doesn't matter which game it is. It doesn't matter who wins and who loses. How the other games play out. The Giants need one win, and they're in the playoffs. And if they get that win this weekend, you can make, there's a possibility maybe they rest some of their players, get a little bit healthier for the playoffs because right now they're pretty hurt. But this weekend's game's a big game for the Giants because you got to go out there and win this weekend. Again, it's only one win, but you don't want to have to go on the road in Philly. Even if they're benching some of their starters, you don't want to go on the road there and have to play up against Gardner Minshew, who just gave the Cowboys a run for their money on the road. Gardner Minshew is not your typical backup quarterback. It's not like, oh no, Jalen Hurts is out, we're going up against Trace McSorley like, the Cardinals had last night, or Colt McCoy, one of those guys that you should beat, or Carson Wentz. You're going up against a guy in Gardner Minshew who is a borderline starter in this league and showed that on Sunday and showed that against the Cowboys. You count many moments in that game. It looked like the Eagles were going to run away with it. Cowboys stayed in it, and that's a credit to them. They came away with the win at home. But Gardner Minshew is no easy guy to beat. And, he's not one of those quarterbacks that you look and say, back up, we'll win that game. No, he can compete in this league. So I think it's more important now for the Giants. You got to win this weekend. You're at home against a terrible Colts team who is terrible, who has a terrible head coach in Jeff Saturday. They stink. They're a mess. They're a train wreck. They don't score on offense. All the Giants need to do is probably put up about 17 points, 20 points, and they'll win that game. And that's been the Giants' recipe this year. They don't score a ton. They get the stops they need. They come back in games. That's how they win. And the Colts, I think the Giants really, what the Giants do well is going to really play well against the Colts. Like, the Colts don't score a ton, neither the Giants, but that's how the Giants win games. They're not going to win games in shootouts. That's why I think the concern is you got to go on the road in Philly and play up against a guy in Gardner Minshew who just put up 34 against a good Cowboys defense. That's the only thing. So it's a big game for them this weekend. But they control their destiny. One win and you're in. It was a tough loss on Sunday, obviously, against the Vikings. It was. And I'll tell you what, I got to give credit where credit's due to Daniel Jones. He's a very good quarterback. Daniel Jones has earned every penny of the contract that he's going to get this year. If I'm the New York Giants, I bring back Daniel Jones without a doubt. I don't think there's much consideration. I don't think there's much thought. If I'm the Giants, I say, look, here's your contract. Take it. Let's run it back. That's how I see it. The Giants are – Daniel Jones is doing some really good things, and he's got no help around him. I mean, yesterday he went 30 of 42, 334 yards. He had a touchdown, a pick, and he had a QBR of 57.9, overall player rating of 92.8. Daniel Jones is a good quarterback, and he's playing good this year. And he's earned a lot of – he's earned another opportunity with this Giant team. And you could just see what Brian Dable has done to Daniel Jones. You could just see in terms of his decision-making, his pocket awareness, his presence, his footwork, his overall play has been elevated just by Brian Dable being the head coach. And that's a credit to Dable. It's also a credit to Daniel Jones in fitting in this system and showing that, look, I can be a quarterback in this league. I can be a quarterback for this organization. I just need the right coach. Now all he needs is the pieces around him. Daniel Jones is playing with some of the worst pieces around him in all the NFL. He probably has the least amount of weapons ever. And number one, the Giants are an 8-win team. In itself, that's a miracle. Number two, Daniel Jones is having his best year of his career. Maybe when you look at the numbers, you could say, his rookie year, he threw 27 touchdowns this season. He's only got 13. No. He was very reckless in his rookie year. He had 24 touchdowns. He had 12 interceptions, and he had a ton of fumbles. He had 6 fumbles that year. So his turnover problem he only has 5 interceptions this year. That's tied for second best in the NFL. Everything that Daniel Jones, we went into this year, and everybody was saying, this is what you need to see out of Daniel Jones. You need to see, number one, you need to see him have a good year, right? See him progress in the system. But some of the little things, like if you really want to go into detail, you need to see the turnovers. After last season, after we really struggled, you need to see the turnovers drop off a little bit, which each year they have, by the way. He went from 12 interceptions, 10, 7, to this year only having 5. Obviously 2 games to play, but I don't see them having any struggles against Indy. Indy stinks. But back to my point with his turnovers have dropped a ton, which is huge. That's exactly what you want. Turnovers have dropped. His touchdowns haven't completely gone up, but they're up from last year. This is the most touchdowns he's thrown since his rookie year. His decision-making's been good. He has utilized his legs really well. He's doing this with no talent. There's no talent around him. Darius Slayton and Isaiah Hodgins are their top 2 receivers, and Richie James had that terrible, terrible drop pass, which if he doesn't drop that pass, you can make the argument the Giants go on and win that game. And he's had many of those this year. Many of those. So, Daniel Jones, got to give credit where credit's due. He's had a heck of a season considering what's around him. I mean, he's throwing to Richie James, Isaiah Hodgins, who's actually been pretty good, and maybe they found a diamond in the rough with him. Darius Slayton and Daniel Bellinger were the guys that got targeted the other day. Kenny Galladay's no good. All these other guys are no good. Those are the guys. That's what he's working with. His only weapon, his only legit big name weapon is Saquon Barkley. That's it. So a credit to Daniel Jones. And this also shows that the coaching staff is really paying off. Because if they gave him a bunch of receivers and he was playing well, it'd be like, okay, he's got a lot of talent around him, he's playing well. But the fact that this might be one of the least talented rosters he's played with in his entire career, and he's having one of the better seasons of his career. That's a positive. So if you're a Giants fan, again, you want to make the playoffs. I think they will. I don't see them losing to the Colts on Sunday. I don't. But just know that they have, I think the Giants have their guy. They have their guy. It's just a matter of building around him, giving him what he needs, and going from there. Because he's got the coach, the front office, the coach believes in him. He's got the coach to mentor him. I think the locker room believes in him. Now all he needs is weapons. And that will be addressed, hopefully, in the offseason. And then the Giants need to do a lot more eliminating of some guys than, also bringing in some guys because they need to cut. They need a little bit more cap space. I think Galladay might be moved on from this year. He stinks. So we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. But a tough loss for the Giants, but still control their own destiny, and Daniel Jones still showed you a lot of positives despite a tough, heartbreaking loss in Minnesota. All right, so let's get to the rest of the NFL here. Buccaneers over Cardinals. Looks like somebody's on their way to winning the NFC South. If the Bucs win next weekend against Carolina, they are in. They're in, and Carolina's eliminated. Now, if the Bucs lose next weekend, that's where things get interesting. Because if the Bucs lose next weekend, if the Bucs lose out and the Panthers win out, Panthers are in. So I want to see the Panthers win next week against the Bucs. So then it creates that great drama of the final week of the season. Panthers need to lose. Because if the Panthers win on Sunday, they'll be 7-9, and the Bucs will be 7-9. And the Panthers would have the tiebreaker because they beat the Bucs twice. So then the Panthers would need to win their game, which I believe the Panthers play. Panthers' final two game, they'll play the Saints final week of the season. So I want to see a scenario where final week of the season, Bucs are 7-9, Panthers are 7-9. The winner, the Saints need to beat the Panthers. Next week's game is massive. Buccaneers win, they're in. Panthers lose, they're out. And they don't have any chance at the playoffs, obviously, because the NFC South division winner stinks. So, how about that? That would be crazy if the Carolina Panthers win out. If the Panthers win out, they're in. They're in. No matter what happens to the Buccaneers. Panthers win out, they're in. Because they would have that win over the Brady and the Bucs. They would get to 8-9 on the year, and they would be in. And the Bucs would be 7, and even if the Bucs are 8-9, they would have the tiebreaker over them. They're in. So this weekend's game, although you might look at it and say, it's the NFC South, this could mean a lot. If Tom Brady gets knocked out by the Carolina Panthers, that's a bad look. And the Buccaneers play the Falcons at the final week of the season. So both of those games are winnable for both teams. So you'd assume it would come down to New Orleans having to stop Carolina, because I would imagine Tom Brady and the Bucs beat Atlanta. So that NFC South's interesting, but a must-win game for the Buccaneers last night. I think, in my opinion, that was a huge game, because if they fell to 6-9, they would be in the same situation as the Panthers. It would be tied, and then next weekend would be for elimination, because if they would lose next season, they would be eliminated. So the Bucs now have, the upper hand here, but again, it's not going to be easy. They're going to have to. Panthers can win. Panthers can get in here. If they win out and beat the Bucs, obviously they'll be in. Because the Falcons, I believe the Saints still have a chance. Saints aren't eliminated yet. The Falcons are, because they're 5-10. So I guess a situation would be where Buccaneers would have to lose out. They would have to lose to the Panthers, lose to the Falcons, which would get them to 7-10. Panthers would have to lose or beat the Bucs, I guess. The Saints would have to win this week, whoever they're playing, and they would have to beat the Panthers, I guess. Right? Because the Saints play the Eagles, which they're not going to win. And then they play the Panthers. So I guess the Bucs have the Saints. Saints and the Bucs split. No, they didn't. I don't know how the Saints are eliminated. Saints should be eliminated. I think they are, because they lost to the Bucs, and they lost to the Bucs twice. So even if the Bucs lose their next two games, they would be 7-10. The Saints win their next two, they would be 8. I guess they would have the tiebreaker over Carolina. So Carolina beat New Orleans, and then they still have to play them again. I don't know. According to ESPN here, it says the NFC South is a 3-man race right now. Although realistically, I think it's only a 2-man race. But I guess if it comes down to, I guess they would either need a win or a tie from. They would need Tampa to lose out, get to 7-10, and then I guess if Carolina wins, get to 7-9, Saints would need to win their 7-9. Going into that final week of the season, the winner of that game would get in. So it is a 3 team race in the NFC South, with the Saints having a way outside chance, but a chance. They're not going to probably go on the road and beat Philadelphia this weekend, but they have a chance. They're still playing meaningful games. The game still means something. I will tell you that. Packers over the Dolphins, which was a big one. Steelers over the Raiders on Saturday night, Christmas Eve. Obviously, Rams just all over the Broncos. And you heard today that Nathaniel Hackett got fired as the Broncos fall to 4-11 on the year and are a complete embarrassment. Really, they're just a meme. They're just like a meme. They're a joke. That's really what they are. They're a joke. They're no good. They're just terrible. So they're a mess, and they lose on yesterday 51-14, and Nathaniel Hackett gets fired. And look, to a certain extent, I agree with it. I don't think Nathaniel Hackett, I think he lost a lot of that locker room. I definitely think he maybe was a little too in over his head. Some of the clock management stuff early on, they needed to hire some other coaches to help him. I definitely think, a first-time head coach had a little bit of his struggles, which is expected. But I don't know. I'm in the minority here because I think a lot of people think that just because Nathaniel Hackett's gone now, Russell Wilson and this Broncos offense under a new head coach is going to be some, amazing offense. I think a lot of this has to do with Russell Wilson. I do. I do. Call me crazy, but I don't watch every single Broncos game, but the game that happened yesterday and the games that I have seen periodically throughout the year, because believe me, they've been on primetime a lot, and it's been hard to watch. The NFL has been basically forcing us to watch the Denver Broncos on primetime many times this year, and it's been terrible. It's been terrible. And yesterday was another case of that. Primetime, 4 Eastern game, middle of the day, Christmas Day. They forced us to watch the Denver Broncos. That was brutal. But I think a lot of it has to do with Russell Wilson. I think a lot of it has to do with him. Don't get me wrong. Nathaniel Hackett, I'm not saying Nathaniel Hackett's a great coach and the only reason they've struggled. Sure, there is some blame to go to Nathaniel Hackett. But I think a lot of the struggles that the Denver Broncos have had this year is because of Russell Wilson. I do. And again, I think it's the quarterback position. Look at the past couple Broncos teams. They haven't gotten the quarterback right since Peyton Manning retired after they won Super Bowl 50. They haven't. They fired the coach, fired Vic Fangio, had that one coach for a year. I forget his name. He's a defensive coordinator. I forget his name. He's drawing a blank. Maybe he'll come up to me in a little bit. But they had him. Was it Vance Joseph? Might have been Vance Joseph, if that's his name. Or I think it was Joseph something. They had him, got rid of him, brought in Vic Fangio, got rid of him. Now they bring in Nathaniel Hackett, got rid of him. In a way, it's like you see a common theme here. Yes, all the coaches are being fired, but there's no results. There's still no results with any new coaches coming in. It seems the theme seems to be no quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater, not any good. Brought in Drew Lock, that was a fail. Brock Osweiler, fail. Trevor Siemian, fail. Russell Wilson has not done well this year, has had a career worst season. There seems to be something. It's tough to be a successful head coach if you don't have a quarterback. So, again, I think some of it is on Nathaniel Hackett. But I think a lot of this, I think actually more of the blame should go to Russell Wilson than it should go to Nathaniel Hackett. And I'll tell you why. Because Russell Wilson, we saw this, again, last year, the Seattle Seahawks were awful. And Russell Wilson did not have a good year. And you started to hear some things internally with him and the coach and Pete Carroll. And everybody was, Pete Carroll this, Pete Carroll that. Russell Wilson, the Seahawks are going to stink now. Geno Smith has had a very good year. He's a Pro Bowler. And Pete Carroll has got that team at least competing for a playoff spot. They're 7-8. They're definitely struggling right now. But they're in a whole lot better position than the Denver Broncos. Russell Wilson leaves Pete Carroll. The Seahawks were bad last year. Russell Wilson, struggled. Seahawks were bad. Everybody's like, who is it? Is Pete Carroll the problem? Do they bring back Russ? Geno Smith comes in, and they're in a playoff race. Russell Wilson goes to Denver. It's the head coach's fault. Really? Is it? Is it really? Or is it Russell Wilson? Because now we've seen Russell Wilson. It blew up in Seattle. And now we're starting to see it blow up in Denver. And it's like, what's the one common player? What's the one common person in this all? Russell Wilson. I don't think he is as big of a leader as popular as a club or a locker room voice as many think. Again, I'm not in the locker room. I'm not affiliated with the Denver Broncos. I'm a Jets fan. I don't have inside information, but that's just the feeling I get from seeing all these stories and seeing how these things play out. I think he's a little overrated in terms of his leadership. Russell Wilson is. That's just me, and that's kind of the way it ended in Seattle, and they're better off without him, and the Broncos are in a lot worse situation. I think a lot of Broncos fans right now would be okay with Drew Lock starting. And I mean, that's the bottom. I think Drew Lock could honestly. I mean, some of the throws that Russell Wilson are making are awful. No matter who your head coach is, your head coach could be a dummy out there, a literal dummy. And Russell Wilson, some of the throws that he's making are just they're throws that you see from like rookie quarterbacks that are in the just learning. Like these are not throws you would see from a guy that's been in the league for many years and has been to 2 Super Bowls and won one of them. Like, those are not the throws you see. Some of the throws that he are making are seriously head-scratching throws. It's like almost like he's not seeing the field well, or he's not the system or something. Whatever it is, I don't know. I think a lot of this has to do with Russell Wilson, and they're stuck to him. Now, if they bring in Sean Payton, okay, but then you could say, all right, they might be turning around. But you're talking about Sean Payton comparing to Nathaniel Hackett. Sean Payton's an upgrade almost over every coach. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out in Denver. But what a train wreck of a year. And they're tied to Russell Wilson. So I'll tell you this. The Broncos are taking a risk here. If they go out and hire a head coach, and let's say whoever it is, let's say it's not Sean Payton, let's say it's some other head coach. Maybe they bring in, I don't know. I'd assume they'd have to bring in another offensive-minded head coach because they got to figure out what's wrong with Russell Wilson. My only thing is he's so late in his career. Are you really going to be able to sit with him and solve issues with him? Like, he's so late in his career. He's making so much money. I don't really know if he's going to want to be bothered with that. But the Broncos are in a situation where if they go out next season and let's say they hire a head coach, and let's say next year they start out like 1-4, then you're in a bad situation because then it just shows you that Russell Wilson's the issue. So I don't know. I mean, that's the issue. I think the Broncos made a mistake with trading for Russell Wilson. I think they made a mistake. I do. Call me crazy. I think they made a mistake. I don't think it's the head coach. I think it's Russell Wilson. I'm saying that right now. If this time next year they're 11, they're 12. They're the opposite. They're 11-4, and they're going to play Kansas City. This upcoming weekend, and they're looking for the division in the AFC West. If that's the case, then I'm wrong. But as of right now, the day after Christmas, the day of the Nathaniel Hackett firing, I don't think this is going to do anything for the Denver Broncos. I don't, unless if they bring in a guy like a Sean Payton. But if they bring in another just offensive coordinator or just another coach like that, I think Russell Wilson's the big issue. So we'll see. I don't know. We'll see what they can do these final 2 games of the season. It's not going to be easy. They got the Chiefs on the road, and then they got the Chargers at home. So they're 2 tough games. If they come out these next 2 games and play hard and play well, and maybe you see Russell Wilson start to show some glimpses of his old self, maybe then you say, okay, maybe it was Hackett holding him back. But for right now, I think it's Russell Wilson holding back this team. That's how I see it. So again, I'm not saying Hackett was a perfect head coach, and I would want him to be the next head coach of the New York Jets. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is I think Russell Wilson has a lot to do with this. I think a lot of fans out there think that now that Nathaniel Hackett is gone, all of a sudden Russell Wilson's just going to turn into the quarterback that he was in Seattle, and we're all of a sudden going to see this Broncos team mesh and play well together next season. I don't necessarily think that. With the way it ended in Seattle, it's the same thing happening here again. And look, Seattle's better off without him. So that's how I see it. That's just me. I know I'm in the minority a little bit, but that's my feeling on it. So to get to the rest of the games over the weekend, Cowboys over the Eagles. I talked about that earlier. Shootout there. I'll tell you what, Gardner Minshew, he's gonna have some teams wanting him next season. I will tell you that. Huge day for him. 355 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have 2 picks. But he is a very good backup. He's probably the best backup quarterback in the NFL, borderline starter. He could definitely be a guy that can keep your team competitive for a full 18-game season. I'll tell you that for sure. Or 17-game season, rather, 18 weeks. Niners over the Commanders. Brock Purdy continues his dominance. I mean, what a story. What a story for him. He went 234 yards, 2 touchdowns. I'll tell you what, I think the Niners are the best team in the NFC. Call me crazy. I think they might even be better than the Eagles because I think their defense is that good. Their defense is really, really good. And something about Brock Purdy, as much as people want to make fun of him, I mean, he's one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL right now the past 3 weeks of the season, the past 3 weeks. I saw a stat today on NFL and CBS. It was something about, like, his passer rating, his touchdowns are, like, first among all quarterbacks the past, 3 weeks. He's been one of the best quarterbacks in football the past 3 weeks. So, just imagine if, what more he can do the rest of the way. Texans over the Titans. This was the game I said on Friday. I said, I'm going to take the Texans. I said, I don't really know why, but I'm going to take them anyway because Ryan Tannehill was out, obviously. The Titans got problems. They got problems. And now they look at the situation there in Tennessee, and their offense is a train wreck. They got to figure something out. Malik Willis in the couple games he's played this year has been terrible. Yesterday was no good. They're a mess. The Titans are a mess. So it'll be interesting to see what they do this offseason. They're still in a playoff race. Obviously, Jacksonville and Tennessee are fighting for the AFC South. The AFC and NFC South. Nobody wants to win those divisions. It's funny. Bengals over the Patriots. This got close, but the Bengals were able to get the job done. Rahamjay Stevenson fumbling. Bengals got it done. Panthers over the Lions in a big way. Carolina ran all over Detroit. All over them. 2 running backs with over 100 yards in the day. Dante Foreman, 165 yards. Chuba Hubbard, 125 yards. Darnold, 250 for a touchdown. He had a good day. Darnold's making some strides. I'll tell you what. Steve Wilks, Sam Darnold, and this Panthers roster, they are not that. They're competing. I'm not saying that they're going to go win a Super Bowl next season. But I don't think it's crazy to say, you know what? Even if they bring Wilks back on maybe a one-year deal, kind of a prove-it deal for like a head coach, say, look, we're going to bring you in, or something like that. Bring him in, 2-year deal maybe, and say, look, we like what we saw out of you last season after we fired Matt Rule. I mean, they're playing meaningful games. I mean, they have an opportunity this weekend. The Panthers control their own destiny. They really do. If they win out, they're in. No matter what happens, if they win out, the Panthers are in. So they control their own destiny. They do. So they have a big opportunity this weekend against Tampa and Tom Brady. How will that play out? Bills over the Bears, Chiefs over the Seahawks, Ravens over the Falcons, and Saints over the Browns, which was an incredibly cold game. So Browns are eliminated. They get buried. And the Browns go into the offseason where you get Deshaun Watson for a couple games. He hasn't played up to his ability. You hope that he can kind of take these couple games as, kind of knock it off the rust. And Browns go into the next year is a big year for the Browns. It's a big year. Because they go out there next season and Watson's not good and they start to struggle and they're like a 6-7 win team again, they might be on their way to another long rebuild. They just might. Especially with the amount of money that they're putting into Deshaun Watson. The Browns' future relies a lot on what happens next season. If they go out there next year and are bad, it's going to be a mess. They can definitely find themselves again in another deep rebuild. So they got a lot of pressure on them next year. I would assume Stefanski survives this season. I mean, I think, you got to be fair. I think it's a little unfair to fire him at the end of this year. He was dealing with Jacoby Brissett, who, let's be honest here, as much as he's a solid backup, he's not a starter for the majority of an NFL season. He kept them somewhat competitive, but that's just the way he is. I mean, you can't. Jacoby Brissett's not going to go out there and win 10 games for you. He's just not. And then Deshaun Watson comes in and he plays a couple games and he hasn't played in about basically 2 years. So he's been knocking off the rust. They got a big season next year. They do. They have a big year, and a lot relies on Deshaun Watson. Because if he can go out there and play like he did with the Texans, he will be. They'll be a 10-11 win team. They got the weapons. They got the pieces. It's just about the quarterback, and if the quarterback can be, stay there. None of this bouncing around quarterbacks throughout the season. So it'll be an interesting year next year for Cleveland as they're eliminated. But again, I think for Browns fans, what you would want to see these final 2 weeks, see some sort of progress from Watson. It seemed like he was getting better, and then it seems like he was getting better, and it's like, Yeah, that game on Sunday was awful. 135 yards, had a pick, 15 to 31. He was bad. Less than a 50% completion percentage. But they got two big games. They got two big games left. As much as, they don't mean anything, they got a game against Washington, who is fighting for a playoff spot, so you're going to have a good team there on the road. You can play spoiler, and you got a division matchup late in the year, final week of the season against Seattle, or against Pittsburgh. So, there you have it. Final two games. I think if you're a Browns fan, try and split those games and try and at least see Deshaun Watson maybe have one really solid game where he goes like 270 for 2 touchdowns and looks like himself. Because he has not really. He's shown some signs, but Sunday was just a huge step back. Or Saturday. I know the weather was bad, but come on now. Watson played terrible. He was not good. Especially late in that game, taking that sack. 4th down and 10. For the games on the line, 4th down and 10, the least you could do is just throw it up in the end zone. Even if it's triple coverage, throw it up. You never know what's going to happen. You taking a sack's not going to help. So, he had a lot of time, too. He could have stepped up and tried to just throw it up or try to find a guy. I know even if or maybe step up and try to, I don't even know. I have to look back, try to run for it. But he's looked bad. He's looked really bad. Really rusty. All right, so now for tonight's game. For us Jet fans, we're rooting for the Colts. Jeff Saturday, showing up on a Monday. Let's see if it happens. Chargers, Colts tonight. Chargers come into this game 8-6. Colts come into this game 4-9-1. Chargers are 3.5-point favorites. Over/under set at 44.5. Today, 8:15 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. Although it doesn't affect the Jets a ton, there are still scenarios where Chargers losing could help the Jets. So we want to see the Chargers lose because there's still that slim scenario where if the Chargers lose, they're out. And the Bengals win on Sunday. It would set up that game Sunday night, Jets-Dolphins. No matter who the winner of that game is, they're both in. Because Chargers would lose out, they would be out. There's a good chance. I believe it would be Dolphins might bench their starters, and I believe it would be the Jets would need to beat them, right? Because I think that's how it would be. Yeah. If the Chargers lose out, and that Jets-Dolphins game Sunday night, the Dolphins might have already clinched a playoff spot. So they might be benching their starters, and then the Jets would get Dolphins team benching their starters. Possibility. So, root for the Colts tonight. As much as it doesn't mean a ton, because the Jets mainly control their own destiny. Like the Chargers, if they win tonight, doesn't impact the Jets much. Because all the Jets really need is to win 2 games and the New England to lose one of their games. That's the easiest path. There's other ways that would involve the Chargers losing, but the most realistic path, the easiest path, realistic path is you win your next 2, have New England lose one of its next 2. So, I'm going for the Colts tonight because, you never know what other scenarios you might need down the line. I mean, we didn't know we'd be in this situation, so who knows what happens these final 2 weeks of the season. It seems like the madness is just beginning. Chargers come into this game, though, a 3.5-point favorite, over/under set at 44.5, 8:15 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. I am going for the Colts, but I'm going to take the Chargers here. I have no hope. I have no belief in the Colts. They stink. They're terrible. Jeff Saturday stinks. They go into an offseason where they're going to need to find a quarterback. They're going to need to draft one. Enough of this veteran stuff. They need to draft a quarterback. They need to develop a quarterback, hire a new coach, and figure it out. And they need a lot more talent. They don't have much talent on the roster. They need a lot more. Colts are a mess. I'll take the Chargers. 27-13 Chargers win. I'll take the under on the over-under 44.5. Give me the Chargers by a lot, covering the 3.5. All right, so that will do it for the NFL games over the weekend. As I mentioned today, you got the Nets-Cavs, a big one in Cleveland. If the Nets win this game, they will be, a 2-3 seed by the end of the night. They would be a 3 seed. So, Nets are cruising right now. 8-game win streak. Look to make it 9 and look to get into the 3 seed. And Nets are 2.5 games out of the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. So, Nets are rolling. They are rolling. This is what this team could be. And by the way, it's crazy to think. So, the Warriors are the 11 seed in the Western Conference. Okay, they are 6 games out of the 1 seed. The Knicks who are a 6 seed, are 6 games out of the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. So the Western Conference, basically every team going all the way to even the Warriors, 11 seed, all are within 6 games. Now let me give you something. So the Lakers, who are 13 seed, 8.5 games out, less than 10 games out. You go to the Magic, 11 games out. The Western Conference is very close, very close. I mean, the Warriors could go on a run, and I know they're without Curry, but when they get Steph Curry back, they can go on a run where they win 9 straight, and they can go from the 11 seed to like the 2 seed just like that. So in the Western Conference, seeding doesn't really mean anything right now. Because honestly, the Timberwolves as a 10 seed have a chance to be in the top 5. They're 2.5 games out of the Suns. That's what's crazy about this all. So, and there's 2 teams that are tied for the one. So the Pelicans and Grizzlies are tied 1 game out, and the Suns and the Clippers are tied. The 5 seed 3 games out of the 3 games out. It's crazy. It's why the Western Conference is so close. It's crazy. Like, honestly, the Kings have a realistic chance. As the 6 seed, they can win 5 in a row and be the number 2 seed. The Kings are 2.5 games out of the Pelicans. Pelicans are the 2 seed. The Western Conference is crazy. It really is in the NBA. Any team, and all up for grabs. All right, so let's get to fantasy. It was a tough weekend for me for fantasy, although at this point I'm not done with it, but all of my leagues I'm over. All of my leagues I'm out of the playoffs, so at this point for me it's tough. It looks like I'm going to lose in every league except 1, so 4 leagues, went 1-3. So yeah, it was not a great year for fantasy football. I struggled. I had a realistic possibility of being in 2 playoffs. Although the last week of the season I lost, and then the 1 league I won and I was in, and I lost in the first round. So that's unfortunate. So, but it is what it is. Fantasy football it's not easy. It's tough. But I still have a chance. I'm in the constellation, so I guess I still have a chance to finish. I'm in the winner's constellation, so I guess I still have a chance to finish in like 5th. It's a 12-man league, so I guess I still have a chance to finish top 5, which is at least, I guess, somewhat of an accomplishment. I always say this, like 12-man leagues, if you finish anything worse than 6, that's bad. That's really bad, because that means you're in the bottom half of the league. If you finish any above 6, you're in a good spot. If you finish 6th, you're average. If you're in an 8-man league and you finish top 4, you're good. It's like, all right, not a bad year. If you finish anything less than that, it's like, bad year. And same thing with like a 10-man league. If you finish top 5, all right, good year. Bottom 5, not great. So still going for maybe a top 5 finish. Which in my 1 league, I have Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen tonight, and he has Justin Herbert. So most likely I win. I have a 93% chance of winning. Unless if Herbert has an insane game and doesn't throw to Keenan Allen, that's the one disadvantage he has. He needs Herbert to have an insane game, and then he needs Herbert to not throw to Keenan Allen. So, and Eckler too getting involved there. So, looking to pad the stats there for tonight's game. All right, so anyway, that will do it for the podcast here today. Another good podcast in the books on this Monday edition. So I'll have an In the Trench with Gang Green podcast up here a little bit. I recorded one earlier about the Jets' playoff chances, and I'm going to record another one about Mike White with him being back and him getting cleared. So looking forward to doing that. Stay tuned. A lot of content coming. I'll have videos up every day this week, Monday through Friday. So stay tuned. A lot of content coming. Looking forward to it. As always, hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.